This is Learn from Others, where we interview a cross-section of successful individuals so you can learn from their experiences, achievements, and even their mistakes. We ask 4 questions that will educate and inspire. Greg Stanley will be your guide as we join our guest on a journey from adolescent daydreaming to success in today's world. Join us on this adventure as we learn from others together.
Welcome to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. I'm very excited to introduce our special guest, Erich Cross. Erich, how you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Good. Well, thank you for taking us on your career journey. But before we find out what you're doing today, let's start at the very beginning. And can you tell us, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Actually, I wanted to be an architect growing up. Ever since I was a little kid, I always loved, like drawing houses and building things. And always took a great interest in that. And it was one of those things where once I started going to school, I got into architecture and, high school, doing drafting, commercial drafting and things like that, and really developed a love for it. And it grew all the way up into college, via a record deal on the way, and that kind of put me at a crossroads at some point, so I ended up quitting school. But when I did go back, I actually went back into school for audio video production. So it was like total ends of, a different spectrum and things. But, both of my loves were in music and one in architecture,
Wow, that's really interesting. We'll have to dig into that a little bit more here in a second. I actually majored in architecture briefly as well for a little while. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Well, what was your first job, either as a kid or one which you got paid to do something that you felt like you had some responsibility?
Oh, my first job, aside from, every kid back then, mowing lawns or delivering papers, my first real job anywhere was at McDonald's.
Were you the one saying, do you want fries with that?
No, actually, I was the guy making all the food. So.
Oh, okay.
Making the burgers and all the good stuff, the McDLTs and all that, yeah.
It's funny because I've heard, some people, when they think about fast food joints, it's always the teenager behind there, and, it kind of gets a bad rap. But when you think about it, it's fast food joints that are willing to hire someone with zero experience and teach them, where they get their foot in the door and start learning some of the basics of what does it take to work. Absolutely.
It was, it was a good learning experience. I mean, it was just like, it taught you how to multitask, if anything, because you've got, what they had back then, they called it a 6-3 turn. That was like 6 regular hamburgers, and then you had 3 Big Macs, and you got, all these different select meats that you've got on there. You got to, flip them. You got to dress the burgers, so, I mean, you really had to be quick on your feet doing that job. So
right.
It definitely taught you how to multitask, really.
Well, did you have a favorite subject or hobby while you were in school? Sounds like architecture or drafting might have been one of them.
Actually, yeah, architecture and drafting was my favorite, and then along with band, because I started out, I was playing drums. So, I mean, I loved music, and so between the drafting and music, I had both areas covered in school.
And it sounds like your career path took a little change of direction. So before we get to that, what are you doing today?
Today, I work for Channel 5. I'm a videographer. This is actually the start in April will be my 18th year there.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about what that entails, being a videographer?
Sure. What I do is I go out into the field. I gather news. Sometimes I work with a reporter. He or she will ask the questions, and I set up the shot, set up the visual, as far as the interview goes. There are days I actually go out by myself, like on the weekends I work, and I'll basically do everything. I set up the shot, I conduct the interview, and just make sure I've got a good quality picture, and I go back to the station and I edit it and get it ready for the live shows.
So it sounds like we were talking earlier, and you're off on Mondays and Tuesdays. So do you always work weekends?
Yes, always work weekends.
Is that an expectation for your role?
It's not really an expectation. It's we all have different shifts, and it's all due to seniority. Your most senior guys are going to have the better shifts, your Monday through Fridays, if you will. Being that I am, I forgot what number I am out of the 18 or 19 guys we've got. I think I'm like 13 or 14.
Okay.
But I've been able to move up the ranks, so to speak. People have either retired or they've moved on to other jobs, and so naturally you move up in spots. And then when that comes about, there's a position that's open, so you have a choice, like what type of schedule you want to choose. So with that, the weekends, they really aren't bad. They're nice in the sense that I get to cover, I get to go around the city and cover a lot of fun events. And, I'm by myself all the time on the weekends. And, it's nice. It's a nice change of pace, and it's, like I said, it's always, fun stuff, like going to festivals in the summertime or, like 5K runs or whatever it is. So, it's the fun part of news,
Yeah, right. That's really cool. So is this a union position? It sounds like from the seniority piece it might be.
Yes. Yes. Our shop is a union shop.
Okay. And for our listeners that might not know, could you just talk on that piece of it? And obviously that seniority is a big influencer when it comes to a union environment. And it sounds like you've been there 18 years. So there must be some fairly senior folks there if you've been there 18 years and you still haven't made your way around to the Saturday, Sundays off, if that's what you desired.
Right. That is true. It's funny because we have guys in our engineering department. They've been there 20, 30 years and they still work weekends, so, and it sounds crazy, and sometimes it is by choice.
Right.
I mean, I do love working weekends, so it's nothing for me to be like, oh, I hate working weekends or anything like that. I really do enjoy it. I have people, and friends that, have organizations or benefits that are going on. And, if I can make it possible that I can, get them a little airtime on the news, if it's something, that's really like a good cause or something like that, it's always nice to be able to help, those people out. But yeah, it is, the seniority thing, it's one of those things where me being a less senior guy, a lot of times I work the holidays, I work the weekends. You don't really have a lot of what I want to say, like leeway or freedom or anything like that, because when schedules, get picked as far as vacation times and things like that, they go from the top to the bottom. And, when you're at the very bottom, sometimes it's like, okay, I'll take that Thursday in October, because that's available. Because,
Right.
A lot of times the prime spots are already gone.
Well, could you walk us through a little bit about how you got to where you are? Because it sounded like you were on an architectural path, and then you mentioned music kind of being a detour there for a little bit, which I'm going to find probably really fascinating, and then how you got onto the audio track that is now your career.
I graduated from Princeton High School in 1987. From there, I was going to school part-time, basically putting myself through school. The nice part about it was I actually took a year off. So, I worked for a year, and then it really made me appreciate wanting to go to school to do something better other than just, working retail jobs that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Got into Raymond Walters, we're taking classes there. Just basically, I was trying to build up some of the classes that I didn't do too well in high school, and then wanted to try to progress over to the DAT program. In between that time, there was a local record company here in town, independent label, and I had joined with them, became one of the music producers there, along with 16 other friends of mine, and we had like 7 acts. And so we all produced these different acts, guy-girl groups and, solo artists and things like that. And it took off really well. We had a great crew going and a great thing going there. Everybody that kind of took a look at what we were doing that were in the industry, they were like, you guys are on the right track. You've got everything covered. And it was a really good experience. Long story short, we ended up getting a deal with Capitol Records for distribution.
Oh, wow.
And somewhere along the lines it fell through. But during that crossroad period, I was still going to school, trying to get into architecture. But when that opportunity came up, I told my parents, I said, well, I'm going to quit school. And they were like, what? Are you crazy? And I just explained to them, I said, look, this is really going to take off. I said, it's really happening. And, I don't want to miss this opportunity. And if something does come out of it, I can always go back to school. They were kind of reluctant about it, but, they were okay with it, and went ahead and, didn't go back, kept plugging away at the music. And like I said, we got the deal. Somewhere along the lines, it fell apart, and then I'm like, oh, man, what am I going to do? Because I was still unloading trucks at Lazarus at the time. So I continued to unload trucks, and, I didn't go back to school. My parents are like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know at this point. I wanted to be an architect, but I was kind of torn. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was in a standstill. And it was kind of funny because the decision was made for me in a sense that, the Lazarus Corporation, they actually closed our warehouse down in Sharonville, and they moved the operation to Secaucus, New Jersey. So it was one of those things where when you're seeing the older guys that had like a year or two to retire, and, you know, they've got kids in college and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, you know, it really put things in a different perspective, like, wow, I really got to figure out what I'm going to do.
Right. Life got real, right?
Yeah, it really did. It really, really did, you know. And it was one of those things where I was talking to one of the older guys. He worked in our security department. And I asked him, I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going back to school. And I'm looking at him like, what? He said, yeah, I'm going to learn computers. And I said, what? You know, it just, because he was much older than me. You know, I mean, I want to say he was in his 40s, late 40s, maybe 50s. And I was like 27, 28.
Right.
And I said, you're going back to school? He said, yeah. He said, man, he said, you know, because of the fact that we lost our jobs the way we did, he said, you know, the state will jump in and they'll give you money to go back to school. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah. He said, you go down to the Job and Family Services, Department of Job and Family Services. He said, you take a test. And he said, you can go down there and you take this test. He said, you know, they'll assess it. He said, and if you pass, he said, they'll give you money to go back to school. So I was like, well, heck, I'm going to try that out. You know,
Right.
So I actually went down there and, you know, I took a test and I passed, and they gave me, you know, a little sum of money to go back to school. And, you know, my parents asked me, they said, okay, so now that you're doing this, what are you going to do? And I said, you know, I would really love to be an architect, but I knew I couldn't try to, you know, pick up where I left off and try to continue to do another 3-4 years or whatever it was going to be,
Right.
you know, especially at 28 years old. And, you know, my love of music just kind of took over. And I said, you know what? I had friends of mine that went to Southern Ohio College here in town, and it was a 2-year school. And I was like, you know, I'm going to try this, you know, you know, try this audio video production program. I said, you know, it seems logical. This is what I've been trying to do anyway. So, you know, my parents were like, okay, if this is what you want to do, you know, go ahead. You know, this, you know, sounds like a good idea. So I went ahead and I went into school there. And like I said, you know, the state jumped in, gave me money to go to school, and I graduated with an associate's degree and got my job at Channel 5 like 8 months later, you know, which was great, you know, and I've been there ever since. I never left.
Now, what was that process like? Were you looking specifically for this role, or were you looking
No.
at a lot of different aspects?
Well, no, that was really funny because I actually had a classmate of mine, and she actually started working at Channel 5. She had some connections, you know, inside. And when she, you know, she got the job, it wasn't exactly what she thought it was going to be. We all learned how to do non-linear editing, which is computer-based editing. And at the time, this is 2001, and she told me, I said, how's the job? She goes, I don't like it. I said, what do you mean? She said, man, they do, you know, she said, they're not doing Avid editing. They're not doing this and that. And Avid is, you know, the brand of software that you use for editing, you know, computer-based editing, you know, one of them. And I said, what do you mean? She said, oh, they're doing this tape-to-tape editing. I said, really? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, who do I need to talk to about this job? Because she told me I'm going to quit. And I said, okay. I said, where's your boss?
Right. You're like, oh, there's a job opening up here soon.
Right, exactly. Since I know there's going to be an opening, you know. So she went ahead. She gave me Pat's name, and, you know, so I just sent a resume to him, and I bugged him to death. You know, it was just like, I think I bugged him for like 2 weeks. You know, hey, this is Erich Cross again. You know, just wanted to see what you're doing, you know, see what's going on. And finally, I think he got tired of me. He said, let me bring this guy in and just interview him and see what's going on. I went in for the interview, and, you know, he told me that they were doing this tape-to-tape editing, which I really had to go back to school and learn how to do, which is kind of funny because, you know, here we are, we're doing all this computer-based editing, and, you know, you could do all this stuff on computer, and then they're saying, well, we're doing tape-to-tape. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I actually went back to our school, and I said, hey, I talked to one of my instructors. I said, hey, can you show me how to do this again, because this is what they do. And he said, you're kidding me. I said, no. He said, wow, they're like 5-10 years behind. Right. You know, so I said, yeah, I know. So, you know, he showed me how to do it, and I actually sat for like about a day and just, you know, like just figured it out and, you know, got my bearings back about me, you know, so to speak, on how to do that tape-to-tape editing. And went in, took a test, and, you know, during the interview process, he asked me, he said, well, you know, I've got like 3 other candidates. He said, what makes you the best candidate? And I told him, I said, actually, I'm going to say age and experience. And he said, well, how so? And I said, you know, my age being that I'm older, I said, I'm sure everyone else is younger. I said, I think I've got a better work ethic. and I just told him, I said, I'm just being honest. I said, I said that, the gal I know that left here, I said, I know she's younger than me, and I said they want to do computer-based editing. I said they don't want to sit around, they don't want to do tape-to-tape, and I said, and with that, I said, I'm here to give you 110% while I'm here until you decide that you're going to come up into the 20th century and do computer-based editing, basically, And he liked my answer, and after that, he said, well, I still got a couple things that, people I have to interview, and I still continued to bug him, and basically my tenacity won over, and got the job.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. First off is you had an immediate answer to that question, which was great.
Right.
And then you followed up. A lot of folks, if they don't hear anything, that's it. The figures they're not interested.
Right.
But that tenacity sounds like it really paid off for you.
Exactly. It sure did, and it was funny because, starting out, I worked overnight, and it was one of those things where, I was also a tattoo artist. So, I would get done tattooing around 10, 11 o'clock at night and go right to work, and my friends are like, how are you doing this? I said, I just got to do it, man. I said, I got to get my foot in the door. I've got to make it happen. And I did overnights for 12 years, before I finally got an opportunity to get a different position. So it was nice.
Now, did that lead into the position you're currently in?
Yes, it actually did. And, the ironic part was there was a guy with more seniority who actually wanted the position that I was working. He wanted the overnight shift. So, being they had the more seniority, basically it was like, okay, you have to give up this position. At first I was kind of reluctant because my wife and I, we had gotten married, we had kids, and it worked out well for us. But, in the long run, it was kind of nice because it gave me a break, really. Working overnights, you shoot in the dark all the time. You basically work in the dark. Mm-hmm. And, between midnight and 9, there's nothing good going on. You shoot car accidents, you shoot fires and murders. And that's it,
Right.
And I think that was God's way of saying, hey, you've seen enough, try something different, and I've been at this position ever since. And I think God knew what he was doing because, I get to do puppy stories and tax cuts and, nice things, it's nice, so it's great.
That actually was going to be one of my other questions is, do you get those 3:00 in the morning calls for something usually bad that happens? But it sounds like that's whoever's on shift at that point is the go-to person. Is that right?
Right. You're correct. Yeah. I 3 a.m., I'm at home, I'm in bed, sleep. And it's great.
That's one of the benefits for 18 years of service there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As a reminder, you can check out all previous episodes at learnfromothers.org. If you're an educator or a student, you can search for podcasts by career cluster, and additional resources are under the resource tab. So we just learned what you wanted to be when you grew up, which was an architect, and what you actually do today, which is a videographer. So if you could do it all over again, would you do anything differently?
I think I probably would have got that record deal if it was up to me. I love music. I'm still a musician to this day. I think I would have gone that route. But, really and truly, what I'm doing in news, I love what I do. Apparently, I've been there, 18 years. I probably would change that. It's just as far as music. I would love to pursue something in music.
Well, and it sounds like the job you have now, you're always busy. You're always going someplace new. And it sounds like you're really connected to what's going on in the city. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the nice things about, this job. Granted, it's still videography, every day, but it's always something different. It's almost like a new adventure every day. And so it never gets old, and I think with my personality and the way I am, I think it's probably the best job for me in that sense, because it's always something different. I always work with somebody different. It's great, and, really and truly, we're never really in the office much. We get our stories and then we're out. We're out the door, driving to this town or this city or, this person's house or whatever to get that story together. And, there's a lot of times we work under some serious deadlines where, people are like, how in the world do you even get this together? But when you do it so much, it's kind of second nature in a way, and you don't really fret. There's some days where, you've got like maybe 3 minutes until you need to get this stuff on the air, but, you always manage to make it happen. We've got a great team that we work with at Channel 5. Everybody's super talented in their own way, and we just managed to get it done.
That's awesome. So what is your typical day like?
I start work at 2:45 p.m. on Wednesday through Fridays. And so at 2:45 I come in, grab all my gear, they assign me a news car. At that time, while I'm doing all that, they have an afternoon meeting. So that consists of the producers, our news director, and the reporters for that evening. And they get together at a table, and they do this every day. And they decide, well, what's going on? What are we going to follow? Things of that nature. So, and then once they decide that, then we're off and running. Like the reporters, they're making calls, trying to make contact with whoever they can that has anything to do with the story so we can get the information, do interviews. If there's file footage from something that's happened before, like I'll go and I'll grab that from our computers that are archived. So I'll grab archives out of there, put it in my hard drive just in case we have to stay out in the field. And
okay.
So it's one of those things where, we all have something that we're doing at some point, that has to contribute to that story. Once we get out the door, we go and put everything together. Sometimes we'll come back to the station and put everything together because it's a little easier, especially if we've got a lot of file footage or something from things that have happened in the past,
Right.
And we get that together, and then sometimes we'll go back out to the actual scene of whatever it is that we're covering, and then we'll do our live shot from there.
Now, you mentioned that was your schedule Wednesday through Friday. What's your schedule Saturday, Sunday?
Saturday, Sunday, I work 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it's really not bad. I mean, it's and it's great in the sense that, when it's warmer out, the summer months, 6 p.m. there's still plenty of daylight out, so I go home, I can spend time with the family, we can hang out, cook out, whatever we want to do, and still got a lot of daylight, to kind of hang out and be together. So it's great.
Well, let's make the assumption that someone in our audience wants to do what you do. What advice would you give them?
I would give them the advice that, with news, like I told my friends when I said something about working in news, news will always be here. It's one of those
true.
jobs, and it is, and that's the way I had to look at it, because my friends were like, so you're going to work in a recording studio? I was like, no, I said, as much as I love music, I said, I don't really see me doing that. I said, I'd like to do something with the video side of things and keep that going. And at the time, there were a lot of production places that were here in town. They kind of closed up, and there were a lot, from my understanding, there were a lot of production houses here, back in the early 2000s. But, with the economy or whatever, people and corporations started shipping more things out, and getting them done cheaper than they were in town, or whatever the deal was.
Right.
But, and that was really my choice to try out news. I said, news is always going to be here, no matter, we've got 4 stations here, and, they're always going to be doing something, So, and that was my direction as far as, what I was going to do and stay in the city. Because I never really saw myself trying to move to like Nashville or L.A. or anywhere to try to pursue music per se, because I always had in the back of my mind with the way technology is, I can write music anywhere and send it anywhere to have it, broadcast. So that was never really an issue, like, in the 80s, it was like, oh, I got to move to L.A. to make it, where,
Right.
The technology was like, you can do it anywhere now.
Well, are there any current projects you're working on that you would like to share?
Actually, I'm working on an album now. It's just instrumental music, and it'll be out sometime soon. I'm hoping by at least February it'll be out. So that's about it, really.
Oh, that'd be cool. Cool to hear that. So you wrote it and you're playing the drums on it?
Yeah, I'm playing everything.
Oh, wow.
It's all me. Yeah, it's keyboards, it's drums, it's bass, guitar, you name it, it's there. It's all me.
Well, we'll definitely do a follow-up on that with our weekly newsletter once you get that thing released, so we'll let everybody know about it.
Awesome.
Well, cool. And as with most journeys, success largely depends on reliable transportation, and I'm a huge car enthusiast, so could you tell us, what was your first car?
My first car that my dad bought us, it was a 1984 Ford Fairmont. So it was so we're going back, it was a 4-door, and, it wasn't exactly the car I wanted, but, it got me from A to B, and so that was a good thing.
That's hilarious, because one of our previous guests, Eric the Car Guy, who is one of the biggest YouTubers, you can check him out. He helps people fix their own cars. He's been doing a special on a Ford Fairmont, and it's like a 1984. Really? Yeah. So that'd be something cool to check out. It's kind of a small world kind of thing there. Well, What's your dream car?
My dream car. Oh, wow. I would love to have a Ferrari. Anything Ferrari, I'd love to have.
Well, that's really cool. Well, one of the perks for some jobs is a company car. So if I had all the money in the world, I'd love to buy you a cool company car based on your job. And so here's where my mind was going. You have to get places quick. So I want to get a quick car.
Right.
You have the, like, I'm just thinking of looking through a video camera. You got to have a good view of things. You got to be able to act fast, capture things quickly. You also have to have something that captures, or you can load all your gear into. So the cool company car I picked for you is a 2019 Porsche Panamera. Are you familiar with those?
I am.
Yeah, those are
That
really,
would work.
that would work. Those are really slick and cool cars. 4 doors, you know, it's got the hatchback, but they look much better in the new version than they did the 2016 and prior version. And they're super fast.
Absolutely. That would be great.
All right, cool. I'm glad you're on board with that. Well, thank you so much for taking us on your career journey today. What's the best way our listeners can learn more about you or your company or your music endeavors?
If they want to check out my music, they could go to it's Erich Cross official music page on Facebook.
Oh, cool. Okay. And then obviously the news channel has all sorts of websites just for the news channel. Again, what is the news station?
It's WLWT5.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking us on your career journey today, Erich.
Great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. Where will our next adventure take us? Subscribe to find out. If you know of someone who has a cool career story or occupation, contact Greg through Instagram at Greg Stanley LFO. That's GregStanley LFO. And we will see you soon as we learn from others together.